After 60, your legs are not just carrying your body, they are carrying your circulation, your independence, and your future. What you drink in the first 5 minutes of your morning can quietly decide how well they do it. Hello everyone. When we wake in the morning, we rarely consider the silent physiological shift that has taken place during the night. For 6 to 8 hours, the body has continued working without external intake of fluids. With every breath, moisture leaves through respiration. Through the skin, even in cool environments, water evaporates invisibly. The kidneys continue filtering blood, maintaining electrolyte balance, and producing urine. By the time morning arrives, we are in a naturally dehydrated state. Not severely, not dangerously, but measurably. Plasma volume is slightly reduced. Blood becomes marginally more concentrated. Its viscosity increases just enough to matter in a system already adapting to age. After 60, the cardiovascular system operates under different mechanical conditions than it did decades earlier. Arterial walls gradually lose elasticity due to structural changes in collagen and elastin fibers. The endothelium, the delicate inner lining of blood vessels, becomes less responsive to nitric oxide, the molecule responsible for vasodilation. Veins, particularly those in the legs, may not return blood as efficiently because valve competence can decline and muscle mass may be reduced. None of these changes are pathological by default. They are part of biological aging. But they mean the margin for inefficiency narrows. Small physiological disadvantages that were once irrelevant now become noticeable. When blood is slightly thicker from overnight fluid loss, resistance within the vessels increases. According to basic hemodynamic principles, flow is inversely related to viscosity. Even a modest increase in thickness requires the heart to generate slightly more pressure to maintain the same rate of circulation. In younger systems with highly compliant vessels, this compensation is effortless. In older systems, where arterial stiffness has increased and microvascular responsiveness is less dynamic, the effect can subtly influence how efficiently oxygen and nutrients are delivered to peripheral tissues, especially the lower extremities. The legs are particularly sensitive to these shifts because they exist at the furthest point from central circulation. Gravity constantly opposes venous return. During the night, when we are lying horizontally, blood distribution is relatively even. Upon standing in the morning, nearly 500 to 800 milliliters of blood transiently shift downward into the lower body. This is a normal gravitational effect. The body compensates through vascular constriction and slight increases in heart rate. However, if circulating volume is reduced due to dehydration, the adjustment can feel more pronounced. Some individuals notice heaviness, mild stiffness, or even lightheadedness upon standing. These sensations are not random. They reflect moment-to-moment circulatory physics. Introducing water into the system immediately upon waking begins to reverse this state. Within minutes, fluid is absorbed through the gastrointestinal tract into the bloodstream. Plasma volume gradually expands. Blood viscosity decreases toward baseline. The endothelium responds more favorably when adequately hydrated, improving its ability to regulate vessel diameter. This improved dilation reduces peripheral resistance, allowing blood to move more freely into small capillaries that nourish muscle tissue and connective structures in the legs. Hydration also influences the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, a hormonal pathway responsible for blood pressure and fluid balance regulation. Mild dehydration activates this system to conserve water, which can temporarily constrict blood vessels. Providing fluid early signals the body that conservation mode is no longer necessary, allowing vascular tone to normalize. The result is not dramatic or immediate in sensation, but it is measurable in physiology. Muscle perfusion improves when blood flows with less resistance. The calf muscles, often called the secondary heart because of their role in pumping venous blood upward during movement, function more effectively when tissues are well hydrated. Oxygen delivery becomes more efficient. Metabolic waste products are cleared more smoothly, and the microcirculatory network operates with less strain. Over time, consistent morning hydration may support vascular health by reducing repeated daily periods of relative hemoconcentration. This morning reset is not a miracle intervention. It is a recognition of how the body transitions from rest to activity. Aging does not eliminate the capacity for adaptation. It simply demands more precision in how we support natural processes. By restoring fluid balance before introducing stimulants or engaging in daily tasks, we allow circulation to reestablish equilibrium under optimal conditions, giving the vascular system in the legs the mechanical advantage. It quietly depends upon. Coffee is one of the most widely consumed beverages in the world, and for good reason. Its primary active compound, caffeine, acts as a central nervous system stimulant. Within minutes of ingestion, caffeine blocks adenosine receptors in the brain, reducing the perception of fatigue and increasing alertness. Heart rate may rise slightly. Blood pressure can transiently increase. There is a sense of readiness, of activation. For many people, this ritual feels essential, a psychological and physiological ignition to begin the day. Yet the sequence in which we introduce stimulation and hydration into the body matters more than we often realize, particularly after 60. Caffeine does not directly dehydrate the body in a dramatic way when consumed habitually, but it does have a mild diuretic effect, especially in individuals who are sensitive or consume it on an empty stomach. It can increase renal blood flow and promote sodium excretion, which in turn influences water balance. If the body begins the morning already in a state of mild fluid deficit, introducing a compound that encourages further fluid loss may amplify that imbalance. The effect may be subtle, not enough to cause obvious symptoms, but sufficient to influence circulatory efficiency in aging vessels. Beyond its renal effects, caffeine stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. This activation can cause temporary vasoconstriction in certain vascular beds. While cerebral blood vessels may constrict in response to caffeine, a mechanism that explains its effectiveness in some headache relief, peripheral vascular responses, can vary depending on individual physiology. In older adults, where endothelial responsiveness is often diminished, this sympathetic stimulation can create a transient mismatch. Increased cardiac workload combined with less flexible vascular walls. The heart may pump slightly harder while the vessels are not fully prepared to dilate efficiently. If hydration has not yet restored plasma volume, this sequence places mild but unnecessary stress on the circulatory system. Blood that is slightly more concentrated moves through vessels that are less compliant than they once were. Peripheral tissues, particularly in the lower limbs, depend on consistent microvascular perfusion. Any temporary increase in resistance can influence how effectively oxygen is delivered to muscle fibers and connective tissue. The sensation may not be dramatic. It might manifest as subtle leg heaviness, mild stiffness, or simply less fluid movement in the early hours of the day. There is also the issue of cortisol. Naturally, cortisol levels rise in the early morning as part of the circadian rhythm. This hormone supports wakefulness and mobilizes energy stores. When caffeine is introduced immediately upon waking, it compounds this already elevated state of physiological alertness. While this is not inherently harmful, layering stimulation on top of an uncorrected dehydrated state may increase vascular tone unnecessarily. Hydration, by contrast, supports equilibrium. It allows blood pressure regulation systems to recalibrate after the overnight fast before adding additional sympathetic drive. The gastrointestinal system also responds differently to coffee compared to water. Coffee stimulates gastric acid secretion and can increase bowel motility. For some individuals, particularly those over 60, this may be beneficial for regularity. But when consumed before any hydration, it can accentuate fluid shifts into the digestive tract, temporarily diverting circulation from peripheral tissues. Water, on the other hand, is absorbed rapidly without demanding digestive energy or altering acid-base balance. From a metabolic perspective, Starting with water respects the body's overnight catabolic state. During sleep, glycogen stores are partially depleted, and the body relies more heavily on fatty acid oxidation. Hydration supports enzymatic processes involved in these metabolic pathways. Caffeine accelerates metabolic rate slightly, increasing demand before substrate delivery and circulatory support have been fully optimized. Reversing the order, water first, coffee second, creates a smoother physiological progression from rest to stimulation. None of this suggests that coffee is harmful or should be avoided. In fact, moderate coffee consumption has been associated with various long-term health benefits, including potential reductions in certain chronic disease risks. The issue is not the beverage itself but the timing. Aging physiology benefits from sequence awareness. Hydration establishes baseline stability. Stimulation builds upon it. When we reverse that order, we ask an already adapting cardiovascular system to perform under slightly less favorable conditions. The difference may seem minimal on any single day. But health after 60 is rarely shaped by dramatic extremes. It is influenced by repeated daily patterns. When coffee consistently precedes hydration, the body repeatedly transitions from dehydration into sympathetic activation. When water comes first, circulation rebalances before stimulation begins, allowing vascular function to operate with greater efficiency and less strain on peripheral tissues in the legs and beyond. The legs occupy a unique position in human circulation. Anatomically distant from the heart and positioned below it for most of the day, they depend on a precisely coordinated system of pressure gradients, muscular contractions, and vascular integrity to maintain efficient blood flow. Arterial blood must travel downward with enough force to overcome peripheral resistance, while venous blood must ascend against gravity to return to the heart. This bidirectional challenge makes the lower extremities particularly sensitive to subtle shifts in fluid balance and vascular function, especially as the body ages. Arterial circulation into the legs is driven primarily by cardiac output and vessel elasticity. In youth, arteries expand and recoil with each heartbeat, smoothing pulsatile flow and ensuring consistent delivery of oxygenated blood to working muscles. Over time, however, arterial walls undergo structural remodeling. Elastin fibers fragment, collagen content increases, and the vessels become less compliant. This process, often described as arterial stiffening, alters the way pressure waves move through the system. When hydration is insufficient and plasma volume decreases, arterial stiffness can compound the effect by increasing resistance within already less flexible pathways. At the microvascular level, the story becomes even more intricate. Capillaries, microscopic vessels responsible for nutrient and oxygen exchange, rely on finely tuned dilation and constriction signals from the endothelium. This inner lining of blood vessels produces nitric oxide, a molecule essential for maintaining vascular relaxation and smooth flow. Dehydration can impair endothelial performance by increasing oxidative stress and reducing nitric oxide availability. In aging individuals, where endothelial responsiveness may already be diminished, even mild fluid deficits can reduce the efficiency of capillary perfusion in leg muscles. Venous return presents an even greater challenge. Unlike arteries, veins operate under lower pressure and rely heavily on external forces to propel blood upward. The calf muscles serve as a dynamic pump. With each step, muscle contraction compresses deep veins, pushing blood toward the heart through one-way valves. These valves prevent backflow, ensuring upward progression. As people age, muscle mass can decline and valve competence may weaken. The system still functions, but with less mechanical advantage. When circulating volume is reduced due to dehydration, venous pressure gradients shift subtly, making the upward journey of blood less efficient. Hydration influences this system in measurable ways. Increasing plasma volume enhances preload, the amount of blood returning to the heart, which supports stable cardiac output. When cardiac output stabilizes, arterial flow to peripheral tissues becomes more consistent. Adequate fluid levels also reduce blood viscosity. Thinner blood encounters less resistance as it travels through both large vessels and tiny capillaries. This improves tissue oxygenation in the quadriceps, calves, and connective structures that support joint stability. There is also a thermoregulatory dimension to consider. The legs contain extensive vascular networks that assist in temperature regulation. Dehydration can compromise this process by limiting sweat production and altering blood distribution patterns. When fluid balance is restored, the body regulates heat more effectively, which indirectly supports muscular endurance and comfort during movement. The sensation of lighter legs that many individuals describe after proper hydration is not mystical. It reflects improved perfusion and reduced interstitial fluid stagnation. When venous return functions efficiently, less fluid accumulates in the extracellular spaces of the lower limbs. Reduced pooling decreases the feeling of heaviness or tightness that sometimes accompanies prolonged sitting or standing. The lymphatic system, which also depends on muscle movement and adequate fluid balance, benefits as well, clearing metabolic waste products more effectively. Oxygen delivery is central to muscle function. Mitochondria within muscle cells rely on a steady oxygen supply to produce ATP, the molecule that powers contraction. When circulation is suboptimal, even slightly, muscle fatigue occurs more quickly. Hydration enhances the reliability of this supply chain. With improved capillary exchange and stable hemodynamics, muscle fibers receive what they need to function efficiently throughout the day. This intricate interplay between heart, vessels, muscles, and fluid balance reveals how deeply connected hydration is to leg circulation. It is not merely about quenching thirst. It is about optimizing pressure dynamics, endothelial signaling, viscosity, and mechanical pumping in a system already adapting to time and gravity, allowing the lower extremities to operate with greater ease and resilience in daily movement. Circulation is often described in terms of vessels and pressure, yet beneath that macroscopic view lies a far more intimate process: the life of the cell. Every movement of the legs, every step taken across a room or along a sidewalk, depends on billions of muscle cells coordinating their contractions with extraordinary precision. These cells do not simply respond to nerve impulses. They rely on a delicate internal environment where water, electrolytes, oxygen, and nutrients are balanced with remarkable accuracy. Hydration is central to this internal equilibrium. Water composes a significant portion of muscle tissue. Inside each muscle fiber, fluid maintains structural integrity, supports protein interactions, and enables the sliding mechanism between actin and myosin filaments that produces contraction. When hydration is suboptimal, even mildly, the intracellular environment becomes more concentrated. Electrolyte gradients, particularly sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium, can shift in ways that subtly influence excitability and contractile efficiency. These shifts may not produce overt cramps or weakness, but they can reduce the smoothness and endurance of muscular performance. Electrolytes function as electrical regulators. The contraction of a calf muscle begins with a nerve impulse that triggers the movement of sodium and potassium across cell membranes. This movement generates an action potential, which then stimulates calcium release within the muscle cell. Calcium binds to regulatory proteins, allowing contraction to occur. Hydration status influences the distribution and concentration of these ions. Adequate fluid intake supports stable membrane potentials and efficient signal transmission. In contrast, dehydration can increase the likelihood of minor conduction inefficiencies, contributing to early fatigue or reduced responsiveness in the lower limbs. Beyond contraction mechanics, hydration affects mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are the energy-producing organelles within muscle cells, converting oxygen and nutrients into adenosine triphosphate. This process, known as oxidative phosphorylation, depends on sufficient oxygen delivery and optimal intracellular conditions. Blood flow carries oxygen to the muscles, but water facilitates the biochemical reactions that occur once oxygen arrives. Enzymatic processes require aqueous environments to proceed efficiently. When cells are properly hydrated, metabolic pathways operate with greater fluidity, enhancing endurance and delaying the accumulation of metabolic byproducts such as lactate. The calf muscles, in particular, play a dual role. They are not only engines of locomotion, but also mechanical pumps assisting venous return. Each contraction compresses deep veins, propelling blood upward toward the heart. For this pump to function effectively, muscle fibers must contract rhythmically and with adequate force. Hydration supports both the mechanical strength of contraction and the coordination of repeated cycles. When muscle cells receive sufficient oxygen and maintain electrolyte balance, their pumping action becomes more efficient, indirectly improving circulation throughout the legs. There is also an osmotic dimension to consider. Water distribution between intracellular and extracellular compartments is regulated by osmotic gradients. If extracellular fluid becomes relatively concentrated due to dehydration, water may shift out of cells to maintain equilibrium. This can slightly reduce cell volume. Even modest reductions in muscle cell volume have been associated with decreased protein synthesis and altered metabolic signaling. While acute changes may be reversible, repeated daily dehydration can create patterns that subtly influence muscle health over time. Hydration further assists in the clearance of metabolic waste. During activity, muscles produce carbon dioxide and other byproducts that must be transported away through the bloodstream. Adequate plasma volume facilitates this removal process. Efficient waste clearance reduces local inflammation and supports recovery, which in turn preserves the functional integrity of muscle tissue in aging individuals. As muscle mass naturally declines with age, a process known as sarcopenia, preserving the efficiency of remaining fibers, becomes increasingly important. Hydration cannot halt aging, but it can optimize the performance of existing tissue. By sustaining cellular volume, supporting enzymatic reactions, stabilizing electrolyte gradients, and enhancing mitochondrial output, proper fluid intake reinforces the biological foundation upon which muscular strength and endurance depend. In this way, a simple glass of water becomes more than hydration, it becomes a cellular investment, ensuring that the microscopic engines within the legs continue to generate energy, coordinate contraction, and assist circulation with quiet reliability throughout the rhythms of daily life. Health after 60 rarely changes because of a single dramatic intervention. It evolves through patterns, small, repeated behaviors that either cooperate with physiology or gradually work against it. The body at this stage of life is remarkably adaptive, yet it is less forgiving of neglect. Recovery takes longer. Margins for error narrow. What once required little attention now benefits from thoughtful sequencing. A morning ritual as simple as drinking water before coffee may appear insignificant, yet when repeated daily, it becomes a structural influence on cardiovascular stability and muscular efficiency. The power of ritual lies in consistency. Biological systems thrive on rhythm. Circadian cycles regulate hormone release, body temperature, and vascular tone. Upon waking, cortisol naturally rises. Blood pressure begins to increase, and metabolic pathways shift from nighttime repair toward daytime activity. Introducing hydration at this transition point supports the shift with balance rather than acceleration. It restores plasma volume before orthostatic stress fully develops. It stabilizes blood pressure responses before stimulation is layered on top. Over weeks and months, this sequence reinforces smoother hemodynamic adjustments each morning. In aging vessels, mechanical stress accumulates over time. Arteries exposed to repeated fluctuations in pressure and viscosity adapt structurally. While some adaptation is unavoidable, minimizing unnecessary strain may contribute to long-term vascular resilience. Beginning the day in a hydrated state reduces transient increases in blood thickness and supports endothelial function. When endothelial cells operate efficiently, they regulate inflammation, coagulation, and vessel dilation more effectively. These processes are not visible in daily sensation, yet they shape long-term outcomes in profound ways. There is also a psychological dimension to ritual. After 60, health is not only biological, it is relational. The way individuals relate to their bodies influences behavior. Choosing to hydrate first thing in the morning is an act of attentiveness. It signals cooperation rather than urgency. Instead of immediately demanding stimulation, it offers restoration. This subtle shift in mindset can cascade into other decisions: more mindful movement, balanced nutrition, measured pacing of activity. Health behaviors cluster. One intentional act increases the likelihood of another. The cumulative effect of small actions is well documented in behavioral science. Habits anchored to existing routines, such as placing a glass of water beside the bed, have higher adherence rates than complex lifestyle overhauls. Simplicity increases sustainability. A behavior that requires minimal effort, but yields physiological benefit, has a high return on investment. Over the course of a year, drinking water before coffee means more than 300 episodes of improved hydration timing. Over a decade, it becomes thousands of moments in which circulation was supported rather than strained. Aging often brings a heightened awareness of vulnerability. Concerns about mobility, independence, and vitality become more immediate. The legs, in particular, symbolize autonomy. They carry us through daily tasks, social engagement, and personal freedom. Supporting leg circulation through consistent hydration is not merely about comfort. It is about preserving functional capacity. When tissues receive adequate oxygen and nutrients day after day, resilience accumulates. Muscles maintain endurance. Joints experience less secondary stress from fatigue. Energy levels remain steadier. Long-term impact rarely announces itself loudly. It reveals itself quietly in fewer episodes of heaviness, more stable energy throughout the morning, and reduced reliance on compensatory behaviors. These outcomes are not guaranteed by a single glass of water, yet they are influenced by patterns that support vascular efficiency. Aging well is often the art of reducing friction within biological systems, smoothing transitions, honoring natural rhythms, and avoiding unnecessary physiological turbulence. In this perspective, the morning glass of water becomes symbolic as well as practical. It represents alignment with the body's design. It acknowledges that vitality is preserved not through intensity but through precision. Over time, such precision compounds, reinforcing circulation, cellular performance, and muscular function in ways that remain subtle yet meaningful, shaping how the body feels not only in the first hour of the day, but across the unfolding years that follow.